Hey guys, what is going on? This is Connor5. Today I have another video for you guys. I want to talk about what settings I use and what settings most other top players use. First we'll go into settings here. Now I do want to admit, some of these settings I have been using for quite a while. I think I started using the strike zone cam way back in MLB 13 actually. I think it was called Extended Catcher Zoom. It was called something different. And then a couple years ago they changed the name to Strike Zone, but we'll get into that. So I've been using a lot of these settings for a while, and this is what's worked for me. So let's go ahead and talk about some of them. Alright, starting with batting. You have a few different options here, but I'm telling you guys, if you want to be a competitive player at the top level, your only option really is zone. Now I could do videos on the other two if you guys really want to see me talk about them. I still know quite a bit about the other two interfaces. Pure Analog has changed a lot over the last few iterations of the show. I remember back in 12 through like 14, Pure Analog was actually a viable option. But since they took the stride timing out, it really has kind of turned more to like directional, a little bit more RNG. I would still argue that Pure Analog is a little bit more consistent than directional, but not by much. So you definitely want to use zone. Input type, I would recommend buttons. I don't think I know anybody that uses analog. If you want to use analog, I would do the flick, but again, I don't recommend that. And there's also the stride option where you push the stick back to stride and then push up to swing. I don't recommend that at all. If you're trying to do it, offline for franchise mode, to challenge yourself and whatnot, keep it more realistic, I understand that. But these are mainly for, trying to be the best player online that you can be. So I definitely just recommend buttons. Plate coverage indicator, I recommended it to be on. Now, if you're used to playing with it off and you're real good and got a good real feel for control your PCI without having to look at it, that's fine and all. The main reason I like having it on is because I like seeing the size of the PCI. Like, I know the attributes for most of the players, but I actually like seeing the size because it can vary, especially depending on what difficulty you're playing on. Like in ranked seasons, it can vary anywhere from veteran to Hall of Fame, and VRs on All-Star, and events usually an All-Star. So I definitely like to just look at the PCI and see how big it is, because that a lot of times will affect whether or not I power swing or not. Hitting view. Now they did add a few strike zone cameras this year, and they're pretty good. I still like the original strike zone. Another good one is strike zone high, if you guys want to give that a chance. And the strike zone offset's pretty cool too. It's a little bit closer to the batter. It makes it a little bit easier to hit the inside pitches. But to me, I just want to stick to strike zone because I just have such a good feel for the strike zone in this camera angle. So if you guys want to try the other ones, you can too. These other ones, strike zone 2 and 3. They're not too bad either. I don't really recommend like fisheye or anything like that. It's really just for aesthetics, but if that's what you guys want, again, if you're playing franchise or road to the show and that's what you want, I totally understand it. In play view offense, now I like high because it makes you see everything all at once. It gives you a better feel for everything, and you're just going to get better situational awareness for what's going on. You're going to be able to tell if their fielders are going to be able to get to the ball or not pretty much right away. If you use like broadcast or dynamic, sometimes it can be difficult to tell, whether that hit you just had is going to go in the gap or not. So I think the high view is going to help you guys a lot for base running. There's a lot of times I'll hit a ball and I'll know right away whether or not the fielder is going to get it or not, and I'll send my runner on first to home, and he'll score because of that. Now, if you're playing on dynamic, you might not know. I mean, if you play dynamic a lot, you might get a good feel for it, but I play on high. I'm not saying this is going to like turn you into a great player overnight, but I think it can give you some advantages here and there. Let's see, I don't think there's really anything else here. The base running interface, I guess there's two, default and classic. I use default. I would just recommend using whatever you're comfortable with. I know a few players, few top players use classic. I just use default because that's what I'm used to, and honestly I don't know that much about classic, but default's always worked for me. Alright, let's go to pitching. So there's 4 different pitching interfaces. And again, they have changed a lot throughout the iterations of the show. Back in like 12 and 13, they didn't even have, no, I take it back. Back in like, before 12, they didn't even have pulse. It was just meter, classic, or analog. And a lot of people at the time had no idea how to use analog. But over the past few years, analog has become extremely popular. However, this year I feel like it is a bit tougher to pitch with pure analog. That being said, I still would say it is probably the most consistent pitching interface. Meter isn't bad either, but again, a couple years ago in 16, when they were trying to implement the precision gameplay inputs, they made meter like a lot more difficult, and analog felt about the same. So I feel like analog has probably finally caught up to meter this year in terms of difficulty. I'd still say you're going to be more consistent analog, so I'd recommend that. Pulse isn't bad either, but once you get to the higher difficulties, like in Hall of Fame, the pulse is going to be so large, even if you have a perfect input, there's still going to be a lot of RG where the ball goes. I would not ever recommend Classic, by the way, and again, unless you're just grinding. If you're grinding, Classic and Pulse are my favorite because they're easier to use. Alright, pitching view. Now this one I really think is personal preference. Some will make the argument that the strike zone or whatever, the same hitting view that you should use for pitching, and I totally understand that because you're seeing the baseball come in from the same frames of reference. So, you know, subconsciously you start seeing those pitches, and, you know, some believe that that kind of makes you better with, you know, pitch recognition and understanding the strike zone a little bit more. However, I have made a few arguments that I like some of the pitcher ones, and I'll switch back and forth. I'm really strange about it. And I kind of made a video, I think I made a video a few years about this, but I prefer, when I pitch a lefties, I honestly prefer some of these pitcher ones. I personally like pitcher offset the best if I'm doing a pitcher angle. And the reason why is because of lefties, I feel like I want to be able to get, you know, my pitches on the inside part of the plate against righties. I feel like that's the most important thing when using lefties. When you're lefty on lefty, you have a lot more leeway and you have a lot more pitches that you can throw to lefties. But against righties, I feel like you have to establish that inside fastball and that down and in slider, you know, a cutter in on the hands. I feel like it's very important. So the reason I do this is because I feel like it's easier to move the right stick analog up and to the right rather than up and to the left. That's just me personally. It's more of a natural motion to move your thumb up and to the right, your right thumb up and to the right, rather than move it up and to the left. Now I'm just a little bit more consistent moving it up and to the right. So when I pitch with a lefty, or I feel like, you know, I'm just, you know, really missing my spots of a lefty, I'll switch to this, and I think it does help me a lot. And vice versa, if I'm pitching with a righty, I prefer like a strike zone camera, because again, I want to get the ball in on the hands of a lefty. Now again, that's really kind of weird, so if that helps you guys, go for it, but I would just pitch whatever makes you guys comfortable. Honestly, I still feel a little bit more comfortable when pitching with a pitcher offset. I don't know, strike zone, it kind of does feel a little weird to pitch that way. So yeah, I think that's really just all personal preference. The next setting I want to talk about is pitching ball marker. Now, I see a lot of people that will just leave this on default for pitch trail fade. You definitely want to have this either on pitch trail on, or I would recommend the classic on. Don't do fade because it's gonna mess you up. It's gonna make you like want a quick pitch because you're gonna try throwing the pitch before it fades away. So yeah, I would either do pitch trail on or classic on. I like pitch trail because it actually tells you where the ball should break and what the pitches actually do. So, and plus, if you guys are playing like a few weeks ago, or last week I believe, in events, they had the strike zone off, so you could still tell, if you had pitch trail on, you could still tell whether or not you're throwing in the strike zone or not. So that's my preference for pitch ball marker. Alright, moving on to fielding. Alright, here. Throwing interface. If you're playing online, the best one, if you want to eliminate errors, is button accuracy, and I cannot stress this enough. Now, if you're good with pure analog, I've never been good with pure analog throwing. I tried it back in, like, again, button accuracy they introduced a couple years ago. So back in the day, it was just pure analog and buttons. So if you're good at pure analog, you know, that was a thing to use back in the day. But button accuracy is a lot easier, in my opinion, than pure analog. Buttons is straight up based off your attributes. It's based off your fielder's throw accuracy, so there's definitely a dice roll every time you throw the ball there. Now, if you want to eliminate as much RNG as possible, which, you know, I imagine if you're watching this video, you do, I cannot stress enough to use button accuracy. I've seen a lot of decent players online, you know, while they're streaming, use just straight up buttons, and I do not understand it. Button accuracy is very simple to use. If you're not using button accuracy, you know, I'm just going to recommend quit being stubborn and use button accuracy. Get used to it. It's not that hard to use. Now, keep in mind, a couple years ago, you could put this on rookie and you could play online with rookie, but now they've defaulted it to all-star. So, you know, you could go into practice mode and practice this. You know, they have a new practice mode, so use it. And put the throwing difficulty on all-star so you can get used to it. So yeah, button accuracy, definitely use it. Now, button accuracy is weird. I don't even know if, like, the meter is smaller if you have a guy that throws better, you know, is more accurate and whatnot. I wish they would kind of make it a little bit more dynamic, especially if you're making a difficult throw. But right now it's real easy, so there's really no reason why you shouldn't be using it. The next one I'm going to go down to is throwing, well, that's computer. in play view defense, again, set it to high so you can have the best situational awareness, of the whole field. You can see, where the base runners are going. You can see where the balls hit to. Again, it's not going to make you a better player like overnight, but in the long run, it's going to save you a few runs, in my opinion. Throw canceling. Now, I would definitely recommend this to be turned on, even though it's kind of buggy. And what I mean by that is sometimes you'll do a throw cancel, and they'll be very slow to cancel the throw and get out of that animation and throw the ball again. But it has saved me a few runs overall. I do like it. A lot of times I'll bait runners with it. Like I'll throw home and there'll be a guy at third, and I'll fake throw down to second, and there'll be a guy going from first, second. I'll fake throw to second to see if the guy from third will take off. I'll kind of do things like that. But overall, it will just save you a few runs in the long run, even though, in my opinion, it needs to be worked on just a little bit. Sometimes it's a little slow to react. Let's see. The last one I can talk about is this defensive shift. I'd honestly recommend you turn this to manual. You can leave it on auto if you want, but I think there's a lot of shifts this year. So I honestly would just recommend manual and get used to making your own shifts. Plus, a lot of times people won't even be aware that they're in a shift, and they'll just leave it on auto. If you have it on auto, make sure you're pitching in the shifts. And I think that's pretty much it when it comes to settings. If you guys have any questions or anything, actually, here's a few more settings I want to go over really quick. Let's see. Oh, it's this. Alright, so there's this HDR mode. If you have a 4K TV or monitor, you can use this. I don't have a 4K monitor, so I cannot use this. But here's one I do recommend changing. This is the last setting here. Almost forgot to mention this. Is the game resolution. Now, I don't know if this is a PS4 Pro only thing. I believe this is the same thing last year as a high frame rate mode. But if you put it to faster, that's what I definitely recommend. I believe that's the same as high frame rate mode last year. Maybe you guys could help me out on this. If you guys want sharper resolution to play offline and whatnot, go ahead, go for it, but it's going to be a little bit slower. The frames aren't going to be as good, so I'd recommend just turning this on faster. Again, I think this is only available on PS4 Pro. And that's pretty much all I have for settings. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll try to get to you guys. But hope you guys learned a thing or two from this video. This is Card Number 5 signing out. Peace.